What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna with Label Free Podcast. Live your best life. You must live label free. Super excited for this conversation. So buckle up, sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready for some really good, deep, like just raw information being thrown at you. My next guest is a Wall Street Journal bestselling author, founder of 1 Million Exponential Leaders. He is very, very intelligent. He's joining us from Arizona. Please welcome Aaron Baer to the show. Aaron, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Deanna, for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, so glad to be sitting across from you.
We've already had a pretty intense conversation about some really great stuff, and I'm loving where the direction of our conversation have already gone. So I typically like to ask my guests to kind of like share with the audience a little bit about their background so they can understand what you're all about and just kind of understand where the conversation is going to go.
Yeah, I wrote this book, Exponential Theory, The Power of Thinking Big, and that's from about 15 years of research of traveling to over 90 countries in all 50 states, doing innovation facilitation. So working with companies on how they can innovate themselves and grow themselves. And I would literally take these companies, and the reason I traveled so much is we would choose a destination like Singapore, Shanghai, Shenzhen, London, Copenhagen, and then we would take the board of directors of a global company like Daimler or Coca-Cola, and we would take them to those markets, and then we'd show them all the companies that are potentially going to disrupt them.
Okay.
And through that, though, what it really ended up being and where exponential theory has evolved to is we saw that these companies and these people that were really thinking bigger about the world became more conscious. And that's really what exponential theory is that as you think bigger, you become more conscious. And part of that is I invented this new rule called the rhodium rule, which I'm sure you heard of the golden rule, which treat others as you want to be treated.
Yes.
Then there's the platinum rule, which I think applies more to they treat others as they want to be treated. That I think people are starting to really get to know. And then I invented this rule called the rhodium rule. And rhodium is the most expensive metal. It has platinum in it. So it kind of is infused with that. But the idea is to think about the entire ecosystem, which is for the first time when we look at all the different stakeholders, we're not just thinking about shareholders, but the environment as a stakeholder, civil rights, equality, all these different opportunities for everybody, creating a platform. And the reality is, today you will be persecuted if you don't think about it. So it's just good business. And it candidly is the right thing to do. So part of it is doing the right thing when no one's looking is part of exponential theory. And that's what this book kind of discovers and leans into where I've got a coaching practice where I create the exponential mindset, belief, and attitude. And I'll work with CEOs and different people to really help them think bigger about themselves. And it all comes back to personal. I mean, we all think that it's organizational or professional, but it really comes down to our own personal beliefs of why we're where we are. And all of us are exactly where we need to be. We made the decisions to be here. Yes, stuff in the outer world pushed us here and everything, but how we handled that has us sitting in the seats that we're in right now.
Completely agree. And we could really dive into that a little bit more. I mean, I just really feel at the core of we have a choice as human beings, as individuals to, see what's going on around us. And we have a choice to become either a better version of ourselves, be stuck at where we're at, or just embrace a victim mindset. Right. And I think like what you said, that we're kind of in this growth pattern where people are starting to realize that even when, no one's watching, you have to, operate within yourself a higher level of, respect for other human beings on this planet, and I know we talked a little bit about color, race, and all that stuff, but I think that if at the core of who you are as an individual, if you are not, an organically good person, you're going to have a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. That's really going to probably affect you in your professional career, in your family, in your personal life. And I think that that's a really key thing that you're talking about, where, you're helping people elevate to a different level where they really should have already been.
Yeah, well, and it goes, this victim mindset and just thinking about your past, and your past very much is a lot of your, 95% of your life is lived, in this subconscious that is just anchored in what has happened in the past. And so part of my own coaching is to help people kind of look back and see the trauma, the cognitive biases and limitations, the regrets, the things that have happened in the past, the self-talk that happens over and over again that limits them to where they are. And, I often say this is that self-help sucks. Self-help in the term is that you need help. And the reality is you are where you are because you're supposed to be where you are because you made all these decisions to get here. What you need to do, though, you may need to think about what do you need to unlearn and
Yeah.
what do you need to reprogram? Because if we look into the past and we see, some of these different nuances that keep coming up in our life, and I often share, and I think it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, is where when I'm working with someone, as I said, the micro stories actually tell the big story. We actually do the same things over and over again. And somewhere along the line, we created some values and beliefs of those. And that's even, along these lines of some of these very negative things or viewpoints, point of views that become, and as part of exponential theory, what I learned is I started meeting these global leaders and these people that thought really big, and you just started that they elevated their own thinking about the environment and
Yeah.
about civil rights and human rights and just all these issues that currently plague the headlines that are big problems. And that's what exponential theory's goal is like, let's solve these big problems, because if we can put enough people sustained thinking, no problem can sustain itself if we're literally putting that energy into it. And that's why I ended up founding this company, 1 Million Exponential Leaders, because my goal is to really scale this effort so that we have people thinking about all these different problems and really putting into action because they're thinking on a bigger level. And that's what I've kind of discovered in this 15 years of research of me being out on the road, meeting with all these different people, and some of the greatest thinkers in the world and greatest companies that have, literally transformed the world, some good, some bad,
Yeah. Yeah.
is how can we learn from those so that the next generation of exponential leaders are more conscious. And we're already seeing that. I mean, I think, your show, your message, it's that, everybody listening to this has a rise of consciousness to know that there is that we can always do better. I mean, no matter what we're doing, we can always do better with our time, how our habits, I talk a lot about habits, and we
Yeah.
can also spend our time on things that are more worthy, that are actually feed our soul versus the things that basically take away from it. So I think it's all interconnected, and it's I probably do I'm an overthinker myself.
Me too. It's all right.
Guilty. Yet I think that's part of where I'm just so proud of this book that came out, and really what it leads to, a course called the Think Bigger course, which is really the gateway course for what I'm doing. And the whole goal is just to help people think a little bit bigger about themselves personally, and then they're able to actually think exponentially. Because the reality is all of us have been trained for, we have a brain that's 10,000 years old that, still the amygdala is in fight, flight, or freeze mode. We're
Yeah.
still surviving on the savannah, where now we don't have those threats anymore. But oftentimes we've brought that threat into everyday situations where maybe it doesn't need to be. And that's where I use fear is false evidence appearing real. That
Yes. I love it.
we're making that stuff up all the time of what we should be scared of. And the reality is exponential thinkers actually take as a that goes to that growth mindset, is they take that step into being uncomfortable. And that's where continually stepping in to be uncomfortable, and exponential thinkers are able to kind of really push themselves into that. And that's where most of them are highly criticized in the media until they reach their goals. Take Elon Musk is probably the mascot of some of my business thinking around exponential theory, is he's just applied exponential technologies as well as this thinking to just about every industry. He's been able to kind of break through some barriers and candidly added probably more value to shareholder value to the companies he has than any
Yeah.
other person in history. He has a tendency to like to play in other industries and probably doesn't do so well for them, but I think that's just because he thinks bigger than those industry and wants to apply it and realizes it's not quite as easy to apply it to someone else's company as it is to his own. So
He's a very interesting individual. I've been asked, like, if there was one person I could sit down and have a coffee with, he would be the person. Because I've listened to him on Joe Rogan, I've watched him on social media, and I've watched what he's done in his career with his businesses with Tesla. And he's just like, for someone that as intelligent and as like I have a, I guess, a view on a higher consciousness, he is really down to earth and has like, I think good human rights like beliefs in place. Whereas some of these other men that are in positions like him, they've completely left this planet and they don't look at in people as people. Whereas he still looks as humans, you know what I mean? Even though he thinks that we could be in some kind of matrix right now. I don't know if you've heard him talk about that, but I have. And so I really appreciate and respect his point of view. Gosh, you said so much and I had so many questions. Now I don't even know where to start. I guess no, I think that, a real common theme in some of my conversations lately have been about higher consciousness and really being more conscious in what's going on around you. Whereas like this whole pandemic kind of divided a lot of people, whereas some people wanted to be awake and some people were still asleep, if that makes sense. And we're not going to get into that whole back and forth, that divide and what that means, because you and I both know what that means. I've experienced it in my own family. And I've had a very strong family dynamic, but some of us are very conservative and some of them are very liberal. And I'm like, I'm awake. I'm like, what the fuck is going on around us? Like, this doesn't make sense. I'm like, no. And I just feel like I'm more awake. I'm more aware of what's going on around me. Whereas I'm looking at other people and I'm like, don't you really see so I feel like that is a really great conversation. I feel like that's kind of what your book is about, is allowing people and guiding them to get to that higher consciousness. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, no, it's part of it is in the end of the book, I share these stories about these companies, the Google, the iPhone, like what were the stories behind the stories that really led to these companies really making these massive transformative shifts in society and becoming the global brands that they are. And part of that is, and I think to answer your question, about Elon Musk, because I think I have an idea of an answer. I don't know if it's right or not, but I think the reason that Elon Musk has a higher consciousness than maybe other leaders, is because he's grown it exponentially and been part of that customer feedback loop. And he's really tied in. And if you listen to how he talks about the customer. And you look at these companies like Southwest and other companies that really focus on customers. One, the ivory tower, because I've actually worked with a lot of these board of directors that are insulated from the real world. So they actually don't see what's going on and they actually don't get the right information because through the filters of bureaucracy in these very large organizations, you're only getting to see the very positive stuff and stuff that actually fits your worldview. So the fact is Elon Musk struggled even to 2018, where he felt like he had reached out to Tim Cook and this is what I want people to understand is like exponential thinking is long-term thinking. It's not short-term. There's no quick fix. And I think that's what you look at all these people that have created these insurmountable changes. But to answer your question about that consciousness as they rise, Elon Musk, even in 2018 struggled, thought he might have to sell the company, went to Tim Cook to get money, barely made it through. 4 years later, richest guy in the world, can do whatever he wants. He reached that inflection curve where now he's exponential. The same with SpaceX and some of his other ventures. They all really hit at the same time or hitting, where now SpaceX is shuttling people back and forth from the International Space Station and doing something that any company, and I put a term on this, that Elon Musk, I really want to interview him too, because I think there's Google had created these ideas of moonshots, and they actually created the moonshot factory. It's like, let's think big. And I think Elon's like, well, I can think bigger than that. I'm just going to say Mars shots. In 2040, we're going to put a civilization on Mars. And that's what SpaceX, and whether he succeeds or fails, he's already succeeded beyond any other private space company ever, SpaceX. So, it's the fact that, to really put yourself out there to be criticized and uncomfortable. It's why I chose 1 million exponential leaders. I've worked with about 10,000 people. I am on that deceptive curve, but I will, the rest of my life, I can chase that. And that's a big, worthy, massive transformative purpose that really leads me to my own exponential theory, which I believe the book is my own self-fulfilling prophecy. I start off with a little story about how I stepped into the uncomfortable zone and never really went back.
Hey Dad, how you been? What's going on?
Well, not too much. Spring cleaning time.
Well, did you weed whack? Did you get the carpets clean? 'Cause I know mom's all about that, so I want to make sure we're ready to go.
Well, yeah, I got the gutters clean. That's about it.
That's it? Well, when I said weed whack and all that in the carpet, I kind of meant like the Manscaped 4.0. It's a little more personal.
I understand. Yeah,
Works awesome.
Have you tried this?
I have tried it and it works wonders. It really does. Yeah.
Okay, this is pretty cool. And see, it comes with an LED light, and I understand it's waterproof.
It is waterproof. It works well. I tried it. It's a good product. It's a great product. I've tried other ones, and they're just so noisy, and they don't cut very well.
Wow, that's really good, Mike. Where do we get this?
Well, you can get it at manscaped.com, and while you're at manscaped.com, you know that we got a code, so we get it cheaper.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of a discount can we get?
We can get it at label-free 20, and it gives you 20% off the product, and it gives us free shipping. And I've tried some of the other products there because they got these all new premier products. Like this here, it's a deodorant.
Now, is it for underarm or other places, or
I tried, but it's for the underarm.
Okay.
That's where it's at. And you can also get it at manscaped.com. Same code. We use the code again. Label free 20. Label free 20.
20% off and free shipping.
Free shipping.
Well.
I mean, how can you go wrong with that, right?
Wonderful.
Well, what was your uncomfortable place that you stepped into? What was that?
So when I was 20, short story of it, I went to a small school. I played soccer. I had a soccer scholarship at a college called Indiana Tech, and we didn't have the best internship. So I broke into the Notre Dame Career Center, the University of Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. Well, not broke in, but I
was going to say, really?
Snuck in. So we're not
all kinds of sides of you, huh?
Here. I'm confident they're not going to track me down, but I actually took interviews with their internship. And what happened that day, interesting enough, is I saw a poster for something called Semester at Sea. And I'd never known anyone that had really traveled outside the country or really even to that many states, because I grew up in Indiana in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I saw this poster and I said, I'm doing that. And I was 20. 6 months later, I was in the Bahamas, and I got on a boat that was with 500 other students. And I went to Venezuela, Brazil, South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, all the way around, Vietnam, India, Taiwan, China, Japan, and then back to Seattle. So I literally circumnavigated the world, but every step out felt, in my own limiting beliefs, in my limiting world, was like a step away from my comfort zone. And it was like I kind of feel like maybe what an astronaut feels like if they were heading, away from Earth. It's like gotta be an uncomfortable feeling to know that you might not come back. That then just propelled me to like eat obstacles and challenges and overcome fears, because I had a great fear of doing that because I just didn't know anyone that had ever done that. So it was like, and then all my friends are like, well, why would you want to do that? That's just that was the thinking of where it came from. And I think that's part of what part of my own journey to unlearn and reprogram myself. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping other people do that, because I think so many people are learning. And what drew me really to your podcast was your title, Label Free, is I'm big not on labels, and I work in a lot of different diverse areas and in companies and I have a foundation that does some stuff in diversity. And I think so many times we want to label things, and it obviously, creates a very limiting belief. And I think that's part of my own work of the past is like, well, I often have to ask people their own definitions of what things mean. And what you start to uncover is there's always a limiting belief in a definition or a label. And I often, say, and that's where there's also judgment, people like, oh, he's a narcissist. And, we often want to throw that term around Elon Musk, because he always wants to be in the news cycle or whatever. Well, all of us have some of that, we're all on a spectrum of that.
Yeah.
And that's how that's how you kind of level the playing field is, I have a son that has a rare genetic disorder that would fall on the autism scale. And what I realized, through learning about, his disorder and all this, he got put into the autism scale, and is that we all have autism. It's just a matter of how much of it, shows out. And I think that's where I started to learn and level is he's actually changing his own relationship with that, because one, I didn't label them that. He doesn't know that. I've made sure that his teachers don't. We've kind of deconstructed where he just believes he's regular. And this genetic disorder that he has, literally the and normally someone would die about the age 7. So
Oh my
it's a
goodness.
terminal disorder. He's now 8. He's thriving. He's
Yay.
in regular school, taking regular spelling tests and math. For a while, he had some, different therapies and different things, but he also was just surrounded by love and surrounded
Yeah.
by this belief. Like, and I think that's where we didn't label him. And, I see so many parents like, oh, well, my kid has Down syndrome, or my kid this or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it's like, it comes with a whole bunch of baggage that
Yeah.
says, this is your new norm.
Right.
So, in that area or in many areas, it's like, how do we actually pull back these labels to help people obviously, pull away from the limitations, and oftentimes regrets too, because, society has demonized so many different things that,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
like sex and all these things that we now, all of a sudden create all these meanings to that, where, if you pull it back and deconstruct it and you use it as fuel, to power you forward, that's where I can help people become exponential. And that's really, it's an interesting thing to working with a CEO that breaks down and starts crying about something that happened in their childhood, where you think these people have everything in the world together. The reality is all of us, there's not one of us that don't have trauma or something in the past that is infecting and, affecting us today.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I actually just recently, and I recently personally experienced, but I had something that I went through about 6 years ago with a removed family member, and all of a sudden it's popping back up like 6 years later. And I'm just like, I've gotten over it. Like, I've dealt with it. I've moved on. I'm like, I don't understand why this is coming up now and becoming an issue. And so I'm stepped out into my, being more exponential in my life, and not wanting to have those limiting beliefs or any of those experiences hold me back, because that does not define who I am. And that's the whole reason behind my Label Free podcast, is because I've had so many different labels being put on me. And I was just like, I'm not owning this shit for anyone. I know who I am. I know what I'm capable of. All that fear, all that trauma, all that stuff, I'm leaving it back there, and I'm moving forward, and I'm going to live my life in love and joy, happiness, and just feeling good about myself. And it's interesting that something that happened 6 years ago is popping up like recently, and I'm like, am I in the Twilight Zone? Like, I'm way past all that. And I realized that you can't, unless someone's ready to step into their own power and get out of those limiting beliefs, you can't really help them unless they decide, you know what, I deserve a better life. I deserve a better way of thinking. I deserve a better feeling inside of myself, and not living in this darkness, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's when I really coach or facilitate, it is a choice that people have to step into it, and it is their choice. And the reality is, some of these different traumas, take a lot more for, and all of us are different, and that's where we're human, right?
Yeah.
And we have to respect, and it's had this experience the other day. I was, because I'm in Phoenix, I was sitting by the pool with my daughter, who's 14, and there was a couple guys sitting there talking about a friend that had mental health issues, and they were kind of making fun of her and everything. And so I had to step in, one, because my belief system and who I am, and just to change the world. And also I had my daughter there that was very impressionable, that they were really talking loud and like, oh, she's a drama queen, she's rich, and she shouldn't have any problems. And I said, hey guys, I go, it doesn't matter where you came from, what your background is, everyone has trauma.
Yeah.
And I said, you're inflicting some idea that we're all, perfect because someone has money or not money or whatever. I can just tell you, I know a lot of different people, and it definitely, money is not the answer. Waking up happy is the answer.
Yes.
You can wake up happy every morning. That it should be the new goal. And sounds like you're on that path. I'm on that path. But I really had to sit down and I talked to these, and then these guys got really serious. They literally, because they had a few beers, they put all their beers down, and they start asking me questions. I'm like, that is just such a refreshing viewpoint, and it really changed the site. And then my daughter jumps in, and, it was like this conversation is like, you should reach out to her and actually support her instead of making fun of her. And if she's your friend, like, this isn't what friends do for each other. And I think so many times people want to make themselves feel, it's this part of the world that in the the end of one of my universal truths is you're always right. I have this in my book. I have like these 7 universal truths, and what we resist persists is another one. And what I kind of shared with this gentleman is like, if she doesn't have anyone else, if everyone else is making fun of her and she's getting that energy, that means you're going to be in your life, you're going to have some response. If something bad happens to her, you didn't do anything. So you have the best chance to reach out. And I think that's where right now, I have this foundation that we do a lot in mental health, and we're building a program around that we're launching next week, is to reach out to those people that need help, and let them know that they're exactly where they need to be. And then, really listen to them. I think the biggest thing is they don't need to be told how to think or how to be better, but they need to listen to, where they are at, and, really have some empathy, which I think that's part of exponential theory, is raising this consciousness. And I have this, term thrivability that I use. So much of the world, we think about maintainability or sustainability, but the reality, and then there's survivability, at the beginning of it, is really, we should look to get into thrivability, because at the end of the day, if we can enable people to rethink about who they are and pull away some of their limiting beliefs, we start to change the world one mind at a time. And that's ultimately what One Exponential Leaders is about. That's ultimately like why your label free, podcast is, so great, and probably all your listeners love it, is, you're pulling away these limiting beliefs and these thoughts that so much are put around that, on a daily basis. I mean, I'm going to say, I gave you a few situations that happen in my daily life, just kind of in stream, because on a daily basis, if I'm in an elevator or whatever, and someone says a limiting belief, I'm that guy that says, I think you can think bigger about yourself. I don't even know you, and I think higher of you, because you hear their self-talk, or you hear these little stories, and I always say the micro stories tell the major story, how you treat, how you approach everything. And that's really where mindset, beliefs, and attitudes. And I generally, my daughter and I, we have fun, because everywhere we go, we walk in, and like the game is how many people can we make smile, and how many people can we make talk to each other.
I love that.
And but the energy just changes in a room. And my daughter, like, it's very, she's at that impressionable, she's turning 14 in 2 weeks, so she's getting ready to go to high school, but she's the most outgoing, and she loves, adults and kids. But when she walks in, when she's with me, it's like, I was like, let's just have a game, let's have fun, and let's just see what we can do. And
that's beautiful. I love that. I mean, that story about being around the pool and talking to those young men, that almost made me cry a little bit. And you're making a difference with every conversation you're having. I love it, Aaron. Well,
I embrace this conversation for sure. So
yes. With that being said, where can people find you, connect with you, reach out to you, and learn more about your book and all the things you got going on?
Well, my book, Exponential Theory, you can find on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. It looks like
that one right there. Yeah.
And Aaron Bare, AARONBARE.com. You can go to my website. I'm on Instagram that way, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it. But would love to connect. And I'm the one. I was a professor for 10 years, and during that time, I'd always tell my students, reach out to me. I will contact you back. Someone from my team will contact you back. That's my commitment. And it's part of what I've always done. And it's funny, very few people take that up, but it's, I truly mean that with my time. Is if you have the time to reach out, we'll figure out a way to kind of help the people that reach out. So very excited to just help the world think bigger. Obviously, this is the rest of my life's journey, is doing this. And I feel like I'm in a good place, and just love having conversations with people like you that are changing the world themselves. You're exponential. Whether you know it or not, you're an exponential leader now. So
woo-woo! Thank you, Aaron. Oh my gosh, I love it. This has been a great conversation. I think we could talk for a while. We could have a 3-hour conversation like Joe Rogan does with people.
Yeah.
But we'll have to save that for next time. You guys, I'm going to put all those links in the show notes, so don't hesitate to reach out to Aaron. he has got a lot of value to offer. He's got a lot of great energy to give, and he wants to make a difference in this world. So be a part of that change. Go check out his book. Go check him out on his website. Go connect with him on LinkedIn. I know that you're out there listening. All my listeners are entrepreneurs and have the same type of mindset as we do. So reach out to him, connect with him. Let's all make a difference together. So before we say goodbye, Aaron, I always like to ask for any last words. I mean, you did drop a lot of wisdom. It was a very deep, good conversation, but anything that you'd like to leave with the audience before we say goodbye?
Yeah, the one thing that I would say that to every single person that's listening to this is, oftentimes we think that we're different than others, and we're so much of life is to kind of find our differences. When we all find that we're actually all one, that also leads to the same fact that all of us fail, and actually the people that fail more are the ones that succeed more. So part of it is this is a journey of learning, and if you really embrace learning, and I always say, failure the only time you fail is if you don't learn. And really, if you can just approach life as you're learning and winning, and that's a growth mindset, that every day you do that. Exponential leaders do that better than others. People that really reach their goals is because I saw this the other day from Steve Harvey on Michael Jordan, that he had 946 last second shots, but he only made like 200 of them or something. And it's like he missed the majority of them. Yeah, we only remember the ones that he made, but we consider him the greatest basketball player of all time. I say that to everyone because the reality is you have to push yourself in the uncomfortable zone. You have to actually think bigger about your life than you are now. You can do better. Whatever you're doing, you can do more. You can impact more. You can share your message. And whoever you are, you have the equal opportunity to, reshape this world. And that's what I've chosen to do. And I have built the belief systems for me to say, I want to create 1 million exponential leaders. What that really means to me is, potentially that is a bigger, massive transformative purpose than Google, because that's 1 million potential mindsets like the Google founders that'll solve literally every problem in every corner of the world. And that's what we need right now. We need some people thinking bigger about all these different areas. And I feel that that's the purpose I was put on this earth. And all the challenges I had up to this point led me right here to this call. This is the most important moment of my life, talking to you. And it's the only time that I can really change. And I hope that we impact a few listeners to think a little more exponential, embrace this conversation, and think a little bit bigger about themselves and their lives. And the future is very bright for those that actually think bigger about it.
Boom. Oh my gosh. Again, I was almost going to start crying. Good tears. Good tears. Like, I just love it. That was beautiful. And thank you for ending with that. Please keep us posted on what new projects you have coming up, because I feel like there's a lot that you're going to be doing. So we'd love to have you back so we can share that with the audience and continue to make that ripple effect out into the universe and change the world. So thank you very much, Aaron, for being a guest today. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. Please don't forget to comment, rate, review, share, subscribe, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.